Us at the tavern, have a drink or two. I'm the eclectic goat, and I'm here to play with you. We'll discuss the theory and the mechanics, how we ask for crits, Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards.
And good evening, everyone. How is everybody tonight?
Yeah, cheers.
Uh-oh. Remember that thing I was talking about with people getting, dropped out on the audio? The one person we didn't check is the one person getting dropped out, I think.
Me.
Oh, nope, there you go. Okay.
I muted myself because I was taking a puff on my doobry Firkin.
Okay. I thought I saw you say something and I didn't hear anything, so I was very
I
concerned
did.
for
I
a second.
muted myself.
It's all right, as long as we're working well.
Consummate professionals, folks.
The technical difficulties abound on this show. Everyone who's been here should know that. Okay, so so far we have Robert who bopped in and gave us a like and had to go to bed, so I hope he sleeps well, and Eraserhead, who is our ever-present supermod. Hopefully we'll get more in shortly. Everybody seems to trickle in 10 or 15 minutes into the show, so we'll do introductions, Grim and then Jack and then Josh, and then we'll start talking about our games. So, Grim, if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, about how you got started with YouTube and into gaming.
Okay. I'm Grim. I am a full-time RPG writer. I've worked in the industry for 25 years, plus a bit, and I have been full-time and working for myself for about 20 years. I've freelanced for Wizards, Steve Jackson Games, Cubicle 7 Entertainment, and a whole bunch of others, but I mostly focus on my own stuff now. I actually got into gaming via fighting fantasy books, and then my first proper RPG was the one we'll be talking about in a bit. I got into YouTube, well, haltingly, quite a long time ago, like prior to 2014, thinking I would use it for promotion. I just didn't have the stuff to do it. And then starting from about 2014, I started getting into it more as a way to communicate with people with a bit of body language, gestures, tone of voice, and so on, so I wouldn't be quite so misunderstood. And now the channel's doing okay. Just hit 8K subs, so yeah, I'm happy. Slow and steady wins the race.
I'm terribly jealous at my 330 subs. Hey Rio, welcome to the chat. I was going to ask you a question. I've forgotten what it was. Oh, just out of the unlikelinesses. By any chance, do you know Tom Kane? He also used to write for Steve Jackson Games.
No.
He was on our show recently. He did GURPS Egypt, GURPS China, espionage, and a fourth one that I can never ever remember. So I was just curious as to whether or not you floated in those circles at the same time.
No. It's only a few things I worked on. Mostly the Munchkin's Guide to Power Gaming, which spawned the whole Munchkin franchise. But I don't get any money for that. So,
that's a shame, because my understanding is that Munchkins is what is currently keeping that company afloat.
save the company, keeps it afloat. I get nothing.
Terrible. I mean, not that I don't love Steve Jackson Games, but that's a shame. Jack,
Hi there, I'm Jack Tarlad. I'm usually mug flinging on Twitter. You can find me at my handles Jack Tarlad on all of my socials. I'm very into retro games, especially retro video games. I'm gushing slightly over Grimm because I'm a massive fan of Ian Livingstone and Steve Jackson and the whole fighting fantasy genre. I got into that myself as a young teen. I went to my local library and I just found one of these books on the shelf, and I decided to take it home. And since that day, I was absolutely hooked on them. Recently, I actually tried to do a stream that I'm calling Read and Roll, where I invite a guest on and we go through a game book, and I'm sort of like the game master. I understand what's going to happen in the book, but they've got no idea what's happening in the book unless they've played it before, obviously. But unfortunately, we ran into far too many technical difficulties, and I've just had to put it on the back burner for a little bit. But I'm hoping to get that stream back up and running very soon. But right now, I'm doing gaming streams on a Tuesday, and I've also got a different kind of stream on a Thursday where I actually do live reactions to dashcam footage, and that's called Mustache Cam. But I mean, I've always loved the fantasy genre, especially, like I say, the fighting fantasy genre. And tonight, I think we're going to be talking about one of my favorite. And I love sci-fi as well, by the way. Absolutely love Star Trek and Star Wars. And so tonight, I chose to speak about a game that is maybe not that well known. I know that Eclectic Goat wasn't aware of it previous to me mentioning it for this stream. So we're going to be talking about the Star Trek: The Next Generation VHS board game. So,
I have to say that in the course of doing this show, I have come to the realization there are so many. I thought I was pretty versed in the weird and unusual unknown role playing games. I have come to the conclusion that I'm an idiot. I have
It's just like,
discovered so many games out there that I had no idea. So
Well, incidentally, on going back and researching for this stream, getting all the links sorted, I realised that there were a couple of other Star Trek: The Next Generation board games that I wasn't aware of. So don't knock yourself too hard.
yeah, I found a Discord channel that I am gonna space on the name of right now. I'll have to look it up. The Bookworms Bower. And there is an individual on there who is a little strange. But man, has so many he, it, I'm not sure. Has role-playing games in Polish that apparently were never published anywhere else, and owns copies of them, and apparently
Wow.
apparently can read them. And I was like, oh, I feel so so unprepared. I'm not the one that should be hosting this stream now. Except that apparently she's very, I assume it's a she. I assume she's very shy. But yeah, it's been absolutely fascinating to discover all this stuff. So I'm always really excited to discover games I don't know. Hey Rachel, welcome. Okay, and Josh.
hello. My name's Josh. Most of my handles online are Rise Up Comus. Last year I released a game called His Majesty the Worm. Prior to that, I released a game called Underhill Bywater, about halflings who didn't want no adventures. Thank you very much. I'm also the editor-in-chief of Knock Magazine, and I am just thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
I refer to him as the voice of the worm.
The voice of the worm. I think people in real life should call me that too, just for what it's worth.
Make it a thing.
You will understand why when we get to his section. Okay, so just for the oh, and Big Ship is here too. Welcome. So just for the sake of the chat, tonight's pizza is goat cheese, spinach, tomatoes, garlic, and had them add on chicken because I felt in the need of some protein tonight. And then just for those of you who've been waiting, sweet potato pizza will be next week, just so we can once again somehow turn my horrific pizza choices into an argument about whether or not pineapple belongs on pizza.
It doesn't, by the way.
Don't worry, the chat will at some point devolve into the pineapple argument. It happens all the time. I usually blame Eraserhead for this. Though Sammy at one point, punished everyone by showing us what an anchovy pineapple pizza would look like, and he referred to it as the Oathbreaker, and it was the most revolting thing I think I've ever seen. The anchovies look kind of like slugs. It was terrible.
I love anchovies and I like pineapple, but never the twain shall meet and never on a pizza.
I know, right? It's just. But it turned out that the people that like pineapple on pizza don't like anchovies, and the people who hate pineapple on pizza tended to like anchovies. So apparently it's just a very strange dichotomy. Okay, so Grim is going to talk to us. I have to say, so Grim is talking to us about Middle Earth role-playing, or MERP, as it's otherwise known. And I'm very excited. I tracked him down on this specifically because this was the very first role-playing game I ever owned. It was not the first one I ever played, but it was the first one I ever personally owned. It was longer ago than I'm going to admit, because no one needs to know how old I really am. But hey, Yarnwitch, and hello to Wormy Spoons. There we go. Here we get into the pineapple already.
Fish and fruit, it just doesn't go together.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, fruit shouldn't be hot. That is my main issue with pineapple on pizza. I like pineapple. I just don't like it warm.
So how do you deal with like apple turnovers then, and like blueberry pies and stuff like that?
Okay, so first of all, I don't like blueberries.
Sorry to derail the stream slightly, Grim.
I don't actually like blueberries, which is why I'm not. So that menu I was talking about, I actually, more than the sweet potato pizza, I have been putting off the blueberry pizza because I don't like blueberries. And it's more that, I don't know, apples I guess are kind of okay because apple sauce is a thing and I like warm applesauce. It's mainly pineapple. It's mainly, I think it's pineapple. You know how like if you eat too much fresh pineapple, it like the inside of your mouth starts to hurt?
Yeah.
So that's because pineapple is so acidic that it will literally start to eat you back. And to me, like, I like to fight with my food.
Actually, it's a funny thing you mentioned that, but pineapple handlers they usually end up having no fingerprint because the pineapple is so acidic it literally wears the fingerprint off their fingers.
Oh, I guess
go and look that up. That's an actual fact.
I guess that would make sense. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more I'm willing to put up with from food that will fight me back. Like I mentioned I don't eat pork, but I would eat wild boar because a wild boar, if you are not successful in taking it down, will in fact kill and eat you back. So then it's a fair fight, and I'm okay with that.
Starting to sound like an orc wanting to eat face eater squigs.
all my weirdnesses. I have a whole thing about the fact that I will not eat any meat source that I wouldn't be willing to butcher myself. And domestic pigs are like, I'm uncomfortable butchering something that might be smarter than me. So, but if it's wild,
it's the only way to stop them taking over.
Those pigs know way more games. They can speak Polish. They're just like so good at knowing the pig games.
Yes, as Rachel said, pineapple does not go quietly. I think Yarn Witch has given us her opinion on this entire stream so far. Wow, that's horrifying. And Mr. Groshmal is here, the fruit that fights back. Welcome. Okay, so yes, I have totally forgotten all of the rules to Middle Earth role playing at this point, because it has been far, far too long. But I saw your video on it, and I was very, very excited because I was like, oh, I know that one. So
I guess
please.
I guess I'll be kind of recapping to an extent. So I actually found my original book. Which, it takes us back to the mid '80s. I think this was the second edition or the second printing. So this was my first proper role playing game. I didn't get into D&D. I think that's the case for quite a lot of Brits, actually. I think a lot of us don't get our start with Dungeons and Dragons, and I think that's a good thing overall. Now, I got into the fighting fantasy games and used to play them like role-playing games, kind of like how Jack was describing for his stream, where I would be taking the part of the book and my friend would be playing through the book and I would be reading the descriptions and they would make the decisions and roll the dice and all that. So that was all before I really knew what role-playing was. Then Fighting Fantasy put out a book that was kind of like a cross between their Choose Your Own Adventure and a proper role-playing game. And that was an orange cover with a were-tiger on the front. And then in the back of that, there were the names of some different game stores and other games that you could play. The kind of thing that you would never find in any published work today, probably, because they'd view it as competition. And I was enjoying the books and enjoying the game and managed to persuade my dad to take me to a model shop in Basingstoke, which no longer exists. The model shop, not Basingstoke. Unfortunately, that's still there. And there was a sort of cubby at the side with a bunch of role-playing games in there. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I didn't know what I was looking for. But I loved The Hobbit and I loved The Lord of the Rings, even though I was a wee nip of a lad at the time. And so I saw Middle-earth role-playing in a box and I thought, that's the one for me. Which was both great and probably a bad idea, because Middle-earth role-playing is like the baby cousin to Rollmaster. And Rollmaster is an incredibly complicated and long-winded game with tons of modifiers and tables for everything. And MERP isn't that slimmed down from it. And as an older game, it kind of assumed a lot of knowledge that you had about Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and so on. And so this book is almost entirely rules. And there was precious little else in there. I do still have some of the other inserts that were in the box. So you got some pretty neat little cardboard characters and stands. You got 2 tiny 20-sided dice marked 0 to 10 twice, and you got some hex maps and things. And there was a Choose Your Own Adventure pamphlet as well, which you could learn the rules through, allegedly. So not really understanding how any of the rules worked. Got into it, managed to corral some friends into playing it, and we had a good time with it, certainly. Looking back on it now, though, I don't know that it's the best representation of Tolkien's work. So I basically live in Hobbiton, a tiny village in the wilds of southern England between Hampshire and Wiltshire. Soft rolling hills, thatched cottages, all of that jazz. Woodland, not that far from Oxford, which was Tolkien and C.S. Lewis's stomping grounds as well. I used to go up into the woods with a radio, and I would listen to the BBC audio drama version of The Lord of the Rings up there. You know, as the sun begins to set, you're listening to that on the radio, in the trees, surrounded by nature. And so Middle Earth was always hugely evocative to me. And so it made sense that this would be the first thing that I would go for. But as a game of Middle Earth, the rules just don't work for that. A lot of the supplementary material was really good. Like they went into Harad and the deep desert and all of that, and they filled out parts of Tolkien's world, drawing on the additional lore from the Silmarillion and the letters and everything else. And that stuff was all good and kind of went into the cultures and so on. But the main book didn't really. And the character classes were kind of cut down versions of what they had in Rollmaster. So it's basically a simplified version, a basic version of Rollmaster, but even that is pretty complicated. If you think about Tolkien's world, a lot of the magic in it is very understated. Even Gandalf, it's mostly gleaming lights, burning pine cones, except when he's fighting the Balrog, he doesn't, even then you don't see him do anything hugely impressive. But this still kind of leans into those standard fantasy tropes. So, and even more so, we talk these days about too many D&D classes having spells, but basically every class in this, other than a completely straightforward fighter, and even then, has access to magic of some kind or another. And so in play, it didn't really feel Tolkien-esque because there was magic going off left and right. Yeah, as much as anything, that's your fault going into it, I suppose. And I was young. It's my first game, didn't really understand the rules, but it was enough to ignite a lifelong passion for role-playing games. Moving on from the fighting fantasy stuff into something more, and reading and rereading The Lord of the Rings, which I guess most fantasy nerds of a certain age will have done before the movies, and now the movies, obviously. Less said about the Hobbit movies, the better, I think.
Gonna highlight that Gandalf did cast Fireball against the wargs and the wolves.
That was the exploding pine cones, wasn't it?
That's in the Hobbit. In the Journey to Moria chapter.
The wargs. Yeah.
And he also kills many goblins with lightning bolts. So I'm just gonna go to bat for Gandalf here. He was flinging spells.
So I've heard people argue that Gandalf should be a bard rather than a wizard. I can kind of see
they called him Gandalf the Wizard in his
well, I can kind of see where they're coming from if you consider that Tolkien was tapping into a lot of ancient British traditions, so like Taliesin, the bard from Welsh mythology. That's kind of worked in there a bit. But he's not. He didn't try to seduce the Balrog, so he's not a bard as we think of it today. Certainly.
It has been suggested that he should have been considered a druid, except that I believe at that point a lot of Lord of the Rings is very Christian based, and I suspect that druidism would be considered too pagan for that.
So it is and it isn't. I've seen that idea. I guess we're going on to questions and stuff now. I've seen that idea bandied about more and more, but see, C.S. Lewis was definitely very Christian to the point where he tried to make his books sort of propagandizing to kids, really. And when I realized that, I kind of stopped enjoying Narnia. But I think Tolkien, not so much. He definitely had his own morality, and you have the mostly black and white evil of the world and so on. But Britain still has very, very deep pagan roots, and I think you see that as well throughout Tolkien's work. This kind of syncretic fusion of pagan and Christian beliefs, where they kind of come together and they fuse and they intermingle with each other. So, like a lot of a lot of small villages, not that far from me even, still do well blessings, which actually go back to pre-Christian times. But now it's the priest from the church who oversees the well blessing. Yeah, it's not some hairy guy from out of a bush somewhere doing it. So
I think that's probably true. I was just saying I thought maybe that was the reason he used the name wizard instead of druid, was that.
yeah, maybe.
So I'm curious. The Hobbit movies, I agree. How did you feel about the animated Hobbit?
I haven't seen that. It's not. It's not something that's shown as much over here. The Bakshi Lord of the Rings is
Oh,
occasionally
let
turns
me
up on TV or something, but not the Rankin Bass Hobbit. No.
let me tell you, it's not shown here you either. You have to go out and hunt for it, but it's like a secret find and seek.
So long as it's not like the Star Wars Holiday Special, yeah, that was disappointment.
One of the things about Tolkien as well, because I'm from Birmingham, a lot of people know that. You don't often hear it in my voice, but I'm from Birmingham, and I grew up in an area um, where the Tolkien sort of the surrounding areas Tolkien would visit quite often, and so in his writings he would often take influence from his surroundings in the current day for him at the time. For example, like when he grew up, he was, in his very young days, he was surrounded by like workhouses and mills and stuff like that, and it had this very sort of dark, horrible, rancid look to them, and that kind of inspired like the industrial sort of aspects of the orcs and all that kind of stuff. In fact, Mordor as well, that was actually inspired by the Malvern Hills. He used to go up to a place called the Lickies in Worcestershire, and on a clear day, you can actually look out and see the Malverns on the horizon. And when you look over there, it's just this huge, like, but it's only a hill, but it looks like a huge dark mountain on the horizon, and so that kind of inspired him for Mordor. And the two towers, for example, those are inspired by two landmarks in Birmingham. One is at Birmingham University, and it's it's Old Joe, which is a freestanding clock tower, and I think it's the tallest freestanding clock tower in the UK. And the other tower is based on a structure, I think in Erdington, and it's called Perrot's Folly. And so those two towers are the inspiration for the two towers. So yeah, it was Tolkien would take, not only would he take inspiration, obviously, as you've said, from British mythology or English mythology, I should say, and but he would also take inspiration from the area around him at the time.
So kind of write what you know.
I mean, he got bit by a spider when he was 3, and the damn guy wouldn't shut up about it. Like,
yeah, I guess write what you know. But it wasn't just British mythology that he incorporated, and by British, that includes Celtic, British, Viking lore as well. But he also reached out further when he was trying to come up with Elvish. He based that on Finnish, which was kind of being codified during his lifetime. They kind of resurrected the language, but he also incorporated a lot of Finno-Ugric sort of pagan beliefs into it. Like Tom Bombadil could be straight out of the Kalevala, because there's bits of the world that essentially get made by a rap battle between two godlings in the Kalevala, and Tom Bombadil is basically lifted straight out of that and plonked down in Middle Earth. So I find that fascinating as well. His linguistic interest took him to other places to pluck up other things and bring them into this syncretic mythology that he came up with.
You've heard the the story about his spelling of dwarfs or dwarves. The
Yes.
Lord of the Rings was apparently almost turned down because they were upset with how he spelled dwarves instead of dwarfs.
Hmm.
And they said, according to the dictionary, it should be dwarfs, FS instead of VES. And he said, I know what I'm doing. I wrote the dictionary. Don't give me a hard time about how I chose to spell this.
He's a professor of. He was a professor of language, so yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Not
he did it.
someone to get into an argument with.
He did apparently literally write the dictionary that they were claiming that this is how you spell dwarfs. And he said, no, I made the conscious choice to spell it differently. And I know it wasn't unintentional because I wrote the original spelling.
And also, I'm writing this book, so I'll call it whatever the bloody hell I want.
I've tangled with editors before. They don't learn.
We have overwhelming support for the animated Hobbit. I just want you to know.
Does anyone have any questions about the game? My experiences with it? Anything else, or shall we move on?
I actually have a whole ton of questions from people online. That Bauer site that I had somebody who could not make it but had a whole bunch of questions for you. One was how this is different from the D&D that came out at the time and how it's better than D&D.
So it was AD&D second edition or the basic expert, companion, master, immortal sets at the time. I think what put me off getting into D&D was because there was a kind of confusing array of things, and it was either the 3 books, which were too expensive for me to wring out of my dad, or it was one of these boxes, and who wants to be stuck with the basic version of something? No, I want the whole thing. so there's that. I think the big thing that stood out to me about MERP and Rollmaster, after I'd had some experience with D&D under my belt as well, which wasn't until years later, but I always found D&D incredibly frustrating because a lot of things don't make sense in D&D, like hit points, for example. So I remember the first ever game of D&D I ever played. It was the adventure out of the module, and I started off playing a wizard, and I got eaten by the first monster we ran across, which was a carrion crawler hiding under the doors. And then I made another character, and we found a sleeping monster, and I crept up and described how I was lining up my dagger with its eye and stabbing it in. And that was just a roll for damage, and then the thing wakes up and kills me, and it's not blinded or anything. Now, a good games master could have got around that. But something like MERP has like critical hit tables and bonuses for doing that kind of thing once you get your head around it. And so for me, by default, MERP was allowing me to do clever things, and there was a way of doing it already baked in. So even if you were inexperienced, there was a rule for it. But I guess that's the best way of putting it. I felt more like I was inhabiting the world when I was playing MERP, even though there were a lot more rules. Whereas in D&D, my suspension of disbelief was consistently dicked over by the game.
There is a point that in that edition of AD&D, I'm trying to remember the exact statistics, but wizards had something like a 25% chance of being killed by the average house cat. Because wizards could only have a max of 4 hit points, and domestic house cats could do something like 6 hit points or something like that.
Potentially, yeah.
So yeah, I understand what you're saying. Eraserhead asked what age this was set in.
I don't think the main book particularly set it anywhere. From reading the modules, I think it was set before the War of the Ring. But then I also think some were probably set after. For my preference, when I was running the games, I was usually setting it after. So there were scattered orcs and trolls and whatever else throughout the land after the fall of Mordor. And so that created an environment where you could have, ruins taken over by orcs, or, refugee trolls hiding in a cave, or whatever else. And so you were kind of cleaning up the mess.
Yeah, the supplements had a whole range. You could go from the first age to the second age to the third age. Even the fourth age, they had some things that set it out in the fourth age. I will note that I have both the first printing and the second.
Nice.
Okay, let's see. What else did I have for questions online? I'm not sure I understand this question, but how is magic access to PCs? In Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, there are specific named legendary magic items.
Right. So when you create your character, you get some random rolls that can give you some slight capabilities or odd little special skills, some of which could be interpreted as magic or might include minor magic weapons and so on. Most of the classes have access to spell lists, which are called things like physical enhancement, essence hand, illusions, spellways, essence perception, and these are all kind of lists of spells that you then get access to. So there was, to my mind, far too much magic in it. Mm-hmm. So that's how I feel about it. But pretty much everyone could get access to some kind of minor magic or spells, and that, I think, a key aspect of Tolkien's world is that these things are special and rare, and it never quite felt like that using the rules as written.
Mm-hmm. And they wanted to know, are the notions of good and evil as cut and dry in the game as they are in Tolkien's work?
There wasn't really an alignment system, as far as I remember. It's been many years.
Were like orcs irredeemable NPCs?
Orcs are irredeemably evil. Mm-hmm. NPCs, yeah.
No, you could have. There's PC stats for both orcs and trolls in the back.
You sure?
Yes.
Oh, I thought that was from making up NPCs.
Yeah. But it's like in the same. It's in the same section. It goes like, here's how you make an elf. Here's how you make a dwarf. Here's how you make an orc.
I mean, you could, but I don't think that was the intent. But again, the main book is mostly just rules.
Mm-hmm. Do you have the supplements as well? It does sound like the supplements are really necessary to play the game properly.
Yeah, I had a few. I don't know where they are. I think they're in a storage box in the attic. I
don't even know what happened to my core book, so I'm super impressed you even have that.
Yeah, I definitely had the Harad one, which I liked a lot, and I had another one about a fortress town that was somewhere near the Paths of the Dead, but that's all I can remember about it. I don't know where they are, and they were kind of adventure setting and lore material kind of in one, and that's an approach I've always preferred when it comes to supplementary material, because if it's just an adventure, it's kind of a waste of money because you're going to go through it once, maybe twice. If you have a horrible bust up with your regular group, you might run it for somebody else. Mm-hmm. But I like the multi-use sort of form that they went for.
Mm-hmm. The last question, let's see, I've lost my place here. Oops, I've really lost my place.
Whilst you're doing that, can I ask how free is it in terms of like the lore and the placing and the character building? Like, does it make any reference to any of the places in the Lord of the Rings world, or any of the characters, or anything like that? I know nothing about this game, so you'll have to indulge me.
Kind of by the by, almost. So it doesn't really go into a huge amount of detail. Like, you'll be reading the section on one of the sub races of men or whatever else, and it will drop in the names, but not give you a great deal of detail. Again, the assumption was, I think, that you knew Lord of the Rings and like
I
you had a
understand.
copy and you could flip through the appendices. A lot of older games are actually like that. I've been going
Yeah,
through
they need no
bunch.
exposition.
Yeah, I've been going through a bunch of older games like Bushido and things like that, and they kind of have incidental paragraphs here and there telling you about the culture or the history, but there's no lore dump in the way that our modern 300-page behemoths have. It's usually the rules, and they assume that you're somewhat au fait with the world if it exists outside of the game. So hopefully that answers that.
Yeah.
Okay,
How you getting on? Go. Oh,
I found
you
that.
got it.
I found that last question. Yes. There is an obvious imbalance in the race capabilities in the source material. How is this handled in the game?
Well, orcs and that are going to be stronger and tougher, but they're also going to generally be less intelligent, but that varies to varying degrees. I don't think balance was as much of a concern in game design not until the late 80s, I would probably say. And even then, rifts happened still. So balance was clearly not a concern for them. So I think it's just...
I did like riffs, though.
So, I mean, the monstrous races are pretty much... You can play them, I suppose, but then I think the assumption is you'd be playing an evil campaign or something. And the other races are close enough together with sort of complementary strengths and weaknesses. It doesn't make a huge difference in the game. But I think you're just meant to deal with it, really, and enjoy that fact.
Yeah, I think that was what they were talking about, is that in the Tolkien series, I mean, wizards are basically angels and elves are super powerful and men just kind of are.
Yeah.
And early D&D was the same way. I mean, it was like in the original D&D, elf and dwarf were both the race and the class. And there was a reason for that.
I mean, elves are still overpowered, so that's that's definitely a bit of a problem. But outside that, I think you're okay. And elves tend to hamper themselves by being arrogant anyway, so that's their fatal flaw.
So their charisma's not great.
They think it's great.
I just want to make sure.
Sounds like me.
Super powerful but arrogant.
Yeah, totally.
I just.
It's only my arrogance that makes me powerful.
Oh,
at least that's what I think, anyway.
I want to make sure I give credit. All of the Discord questions came from PI314 through the Bookworm Bowery Discord. So I just want to make sure to give credit where credit is due. I was not smart enough to come up with questions as clever. So,
how do you think the game would work? Like, if you wanted to, like, let's say you got a group and you wanted to create like an alternative adventure for the characters in Lord of the Rings. So like you want to make a like Frodo and Gimli and all the characters that are in Lord of the Rings, but you want to make them go on an alternative adventure. How do you think that would that be a possibility, or would you not be able to pull off as many things as they do in the book, that sort of thing, because of the limitations of the game?
I think you could do it. The problem you would have would be modeling Gandalf, because the wizards and magic users in this are much weaker. Like the Astari in the books, like was said, sort of angels on a whole different level. But they do talk about like soothsayers and that also existing in the world. So the magicians are a lot a lot less powerful in this. So that would be where you'd run into a bit of a problem. But then you could have Gandalf as a GM NPC and get around that. It's just, that's usually not a lot of fun for the other players. Story wise, yeah, you could certainly do it. I'd be tempted to go with the Saruman claims the ring as being the sort of alternative timeline to go down. That's what I'd find interesting.
Awesome.
Jack, you apparently are being accused of being the bard in the party.
Maybe. I play guitar. I mean, it's close to a lute, isn't it?
That just brings up discussion as to who would be what if this were a GM party.
Oh, I don't know. I don't really know what my sort of go-to kind of character is.
I mean, apparently
I've
you're the
often
bard.
thought
The
about
chat,
it.
the
Well-
chat has spoken. Apparently, you're the bard.
Like I say, I can play guitar, I can sing, I can, make up poems and stuff like that. I was not very good at fighting and wielding swords or magic or anything like that. I could probably hit you around the back of the head with my lute.
Okay, there you go. Chat, you get to decide. Like, based as people present their various things, you have to determine what role they would be in a. He already says you're just a skilled bastard. Is that his class? Is there a class in bastard?
It's just a noble
Yeah, I would
his papers.
Well, it's someone born out of wedlock, isn't it? So, I never really knew my father, I guess. Maybe that can have something to do with my, my inner, I don't know, trauma or whatever.
That's what makes you a bard.
Mm-hmm. I do nothing but sing about wanting to meet my dad. Depress everyone. That's one of my weaknesses. I bring everyone down in the group.
I just want to give a quick hello to the ghost with the most. Hello, Adam.
How you doing, bro?
He says, "Don't bard me, bro."
William Shakespeare walks into a pub and the barman says, "Get out, you bard." Never mind. I'll get me coat.
You are officially the bard now. I always wanted to see a bard that, like, instead of a musical instrument, he just did stand-up comedy. I always thought finding interesting takes on bards could be a good way to go about it. So, hello to Babs from a distance. All right. So while Jack is talking about Star Trek: The Next Generation, everyone has to decide what role Grim is going to be in our non-existent role-playing party. So, Jack, tell us about the board game I never heard of.
Well, so back in the day, back in the 90s, when did it release? 1994. Back in the good old days, back when you were allowed to still say risque stuff on the TV and whatnot. There was like this sort of genre of board game where you had a VHS and you'd stick it in the. Does anyone ever remember Atmosphere? That was a great fantasy game.
I am yes.
So it was sort of very similar to that, but obviously based on Star Trek: The Next Generation. And so the story is that you're kind of like a skeleton crew, and you're on the Starship Enterprise, but it gets taken over by like a renegade Klingon called Kavok. Is that what his name is? Let's have a quick look. I've got the things up here. Yes, Kavok. And so I tell you what we'll do is, before I actually go into it, I'm going to play you, if I can share this screen to
you should be able to. I think I got my settings right, so you should be able to
share the audio as well, so you guys.
I was going to say you have to be real careful about how you share, but
In what way?
In order to get the audio through. As long as you click
Oh,
the
right.
share.
Okay, I thought you was talking about like doxing and stuff like that. Yeah.
No.
No worries.
Just like as long as you've clicked the share audio, we should be fine.
So I'll play this for you. So that it's like a 23-second advertisement, and it kind of give you a little bit of an insight to it. But I'll go into more detail.
Captain's log, Star Trek, the next generation interactive video board game. Who is moving now? Tell me who. Your mission to save the Enterprise from Klingon warrior Kvok. Star Trek, the last frontier in video board games.
Okay, so you got a little bit of a look into that there. That was not the right advertisement that I wanted to show you, actually. But nevertheless, that was a much shorter one than I was expecting. But nevertheless, anyway, so the Klingon is not the Klingon that you just saw in the advertisement there. The Klingon, Kvok, is actually played by Robert O'Reilly, who, if you remember, he plays Gowron in the series. So he's playing a completely different character, but it's basically Gowron. You've got Gowron on the ship. Yeah, so he's taken over the ship. And every so often, he'll chime in, so the video is just on, like, the stars, you're flying through the stars. And then every so often, he'll come on the screen and he'll give you a direction. But the sort of basic gameplay is that before you start, you have to like assign yourself a rank. And if I'll share this screen. Hang on, I'm trying to find
He's proving just how professional we can be.
Yes, exactly. I'm trying to find the photos that I had up, but they're gone now. Okay, so I'm going to share this instead. This is actually the VHS because I found it on YouTube. This is actually the VHS that you had to insert into the VCR player back in the days, boys and girls, before we had digital media and before we had DVDs. We had like these things called VHS tapes, right? And you had to stick them in a VHS player, and sometimes you even had to rewind them. But not a lot of people did that.
I'm entertained that I've always thought the need to put common sense things in directions I thought was kind of a modern thing. But the fact that this was made in the 90s and the first thing they say is you have to read the rules to understand how to play this game. Apparently, human stupidity has been a constant throughout time.
So I'm going to play a little bit of it. Get through to about here.
Commander William Riker reporting.
So it's actually voiced by your boy Jonathan Frakes.
Causing erratic performance in low-level computer functions.
The ship is completely empty.
Practically empty, except for a few crew members assigned to direct the starbase repair team.
All right, Riker, I was saying all this. Come on, give us a chance.
Although I am not on board the ship, I am monitoring the repair team's progress from the starbase. The deadline for completing repairs to the...
All right, you're milking it a bit now, mate. So here we go. We'll save on the effects by having beaming off shot.
New Rocks. It's definitely the 90s.
He's a goth. We've got a goth on board, and so it takes you.
We're apparently also saving by only having feet.
That's it. Robert O'Reilly wasn't available for these shots. So.
I was going to ask if Quentin Tarantino directed,
or the creator of Nickelodeon.
Might be a callback to Undiscovered Country as well.
See, he's not very happy, is he? You can tell. You can tell you're going to be in for a bit of a problem. So this is how it goes on anyway, right? He steals the ship, and then he starts talking to you.
Computer, laying a course for Kronos. Warp 9.
So it's taking you back to the Klingon homeworld. And what the objective is, the video is about an hour long. And you've got like an hour to play this game, basically. If you don't get it, or, you know, complete the game before the hour's up, you get back to Kronos. And, yeah, the muck hits the proverbial fan.
Of course it is.
It's cool that it has a timeline.
Is too weak for such a glorious
Yeah.
plan. But I am a Klingon warrior, and I am not weak. So perhaps you will present a challenge.
Yeah. So anyway, as it goes on, you obviously just keep getting put into these parts of the video where it's got the timer and it counts down. So what you're supposed to do, like I said previously, is you've got to like have ranks. So you've got these little stickers that came with the board game, and you'd stick the pips on your neck, you know, and you'd have this the com badge as well, and they were just stickers. It was just stickers that you put on. I mean, like one use, pretty much, and that's it. You take it off, and that's it. It's completely lost its stick. And you've got these. You got these cardboard. I need to find the photograph so that you can see what I was talking about. But you get all these cardboard sort of cutout objects. So you've got like a tricorder, and you've got these isolenia chips. And as you go through the game, you spin this Klingon thing. It's like, you know, Twister. You know, you spin this thing and it'll land on something, and then you can move a certain amount of spaces around the board, and you land on certain bits. You know, certain spaces. I'm not explaining myself very well because I'm trying to concentrate on something else at the same time. Star Trek.
What kind of bard are you?
Yeah, a terrible one by the sound of it. You see, this is one of my weaknesses.
You're just a bad bard, okay?
The bad bard, yeah.
ADHD.
I wonder if I can share this tab instead, so we can get some of these images, give you an idea of the. What's it? Can you see that?
Is that board as big as it looks like it is?
It's you got to understand that's a portable TV, so the TV is quite small.
Well, that was why I asked. That was why I asked, but it still looks like a good sized board. Yeah,
it's fair sized board. And so, as you can see, it's the Starship Enterprise, and you just sort of like work your way around the outside. But there's certain areas of the ship, you know, you got like 10 forward, you got like engineering, and you have to work your way around the board. And you get, like I said, you've got this tricorder down here, and you got these isolenia chips. And what the sort of objective is you've got to keep collecting these isolenia chips and attaching them to your tricorder. And the more that you have, the sort of more levels that you go up, and you're able to access more things on the ship. But you've also got, you know, like in Monopoly, you know, you got like community chest cards. There are certain squares that you land on, and you've got these computer access cards. I wonder if I could. Oh, it's upside down. What a bugger. But anyway, you got these computer access cards, and they've got instructions on them. Oh yeah, there you go. There's a shot of what was in the actual box. Got like holodeck cards. Oh yeah, that was it. You got like these phasers as well. They're just paper phasers. You've got the cardboard cutouts of the crew members, and that's what, you know, that was your player basically. You just move it around. Every so often, maybe you'd step on a certain square, and it was like a challenge from Kavok, and it'd say, he's detected your movement on the ship, place a stasis field around your character, and it was like this little plastic tube, and you literally just, you know, slot it over your character, and you couldn't move whilst you were in this. But if you were like, for example, a certain level, you got so many isolenia chips or something like that, you could transport to a different location of your choosing, so you could kind of get out of it. Like there, for example, it says Kavok detects your movement. You are placed in a stasis field, and there's the plastic tube, the stasis field. And it says if low-level malfunction occurs, immediately transport to any location of your choice. So you had a way to get out of it. But basically, you had to go around the board, get into sort of each of these areas, like the biolab or the shuttle bay, the sick bay, so on and so forth. And you could collect the isolenia chips. And basically this is obviously the German version. That was the objective of the game, to get to the bridge, but you couldn't get to the bridge unless you had a bridge access card, and you could get that somehow. I don't exactly remember it, if I read the rules properly, because it's been a while.
Yeah, somebody actually asked how old the game was.
So 1994, that's when it was released. Here's your sticker sheet. And like I said, you've got the pips, so you've got like your captain pips, your commander, and that kind of stuff.
I find myself wondering how many pieces you could lose before you couldn't play the game anymore, because there's a lot of little pieces with that.
Absolutely. Let me go back to the rules here. So, like, for example, rules summary as follows. Whenever Kavok appears on the screen, everyone must stop what they're doing and respond as ordered. First, you set up... you shuffle like the deck of those computer access cards, place them face down. Also the rank tokens and the bridge tokens. Place the bridge tokens on the bridge spot. Place a phaser token for each of the player on the phaser spot on the board. Each player then draws a rank token. Oh, that was it. Yeah, okay. So, and then that's when you'd stick your pips on. The objective is to defeat Kavok's challenge, gain access to the 5 levels of the computer by collecting the isolenia chips placed in your tricorder, get a phaser from security, and crawl through the Jeffries tubes to win by gaining control of the Enterprise. And you win by collecting a phaser and the 5 chips, remove your communicator, and then crawl through the Jeffries tube. At the end of the tube, you will land on the bridge access space, draw a bridge token. If it reads malfunction, then you can try again next turn. If it reads stun, then you have defeated Kavok and won the game, and you can stop the VHS there. And apparently here it says Medal of Valor ceremony. The winner is then awarded the Medal of Valor sticker, and one of the others reads the following: for the services above and beyond the call of duty, and for saving our lives, we proudly award you, the winner's name, the United Federation of Planets Medal of Valor. And so I guess, it was just this fun little, fun little VHS game.
If it got a large release or if it was kind of a limited niche thing.
Well, I mean, it was in Germany because we just saw that, for example, and so I remember.
Jack, I think you froze. Oh, you're back. Okay,
pardon?
Go ahead. You froze for a second, at least on my end. So
yeah, that happens all the time. Don't worry about it. I remember when it was the Christmas of 1994, and my mom took us down to Toys R Us to sort of pick out some toys and stuff of what we were going to get for Christmas. And we saw this, me and my brother saw this game on the shelf, and we was like, we want that. And she's like, do you really want that? And I was like, yeah, we really want that. She was like, are you sure you want that? Are you sure you don't want to like pick a different one? And I was like, no, we really want that. And she was like, Your Uncle Jason's getting you that for Christmas. And so I remember specifically, but yeah, to answer the question, it must have had a large release over Europe, at least. So I don't know what it was like in the States. I don't know whether you had many advertisements over there for it or whatever, but it was over Europe. So I hope that answers the question.
Can't tell. Well, I don't know. I mean, Toys R Us was a big thing here too. So I was actually just thinking, like, back when Toys R Us was, back when Toys R Us still had meaning.
Was a real thing.
Did they ever update it for DVD or anything?
I've been looking for it. I think they did update it a little bit later, but not. I don't think it was DVD. I think it was. Well, let's just have a look.
I mean, there were comments. There were comments on that video where people were saying, "I can't play this video anymore, so I'm really happy it's on YouTube." So whether that was because they didn't.
Oh, I didn't look at the comment.
You didn't read the comments? What kind of like?
Bard
what kind of social media person are you?
I don't read the comments specifically because it's just out of habit. I don't even read the comments on my own videos.
Well, I mean, that'll just keep your sanity.
Hang on. Star Trek TNG board game DVD. Let's see. Nah.
Was it just called Interactive Star Trek The Next Generation Interactive? Somebody asked what the actual name was.
Well, it is called it's called Star Trek The Next Generation Interactive VCR board game. However, there is an updated version that is called Bidge Challenge, because that's the Klingon word for challenge or something like that. I don't know. But that's what it.
So the name of the game is
is.
The name of the game is Challenge.
Yes.
Rachel says bards.
Challenge.
Rachel says bards don't care about feedback.
Not Klingon bards, anyway.
Racerhead says that name sucks.
It really did. But we loved the game, nevertheless. I don't believe we ever got to the end of the. I don't believe that we ever won the game. The tape always ran out. So.
So you couldn't get it done in the amount of time that you had for the.
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, like. Well, every time, I guess.
So the questions from online on this one, what game is it clearly a dated game, other than the fact that, you apparently would have to watch the YouTube version now because nobody has VH Plus players.
Well, there is that, but because Star Trek The Next Generation is kind of timeless, the same as all of the Star Treks, because it's set in the future, really. So it is kind of timeless in the sense of that it doesn't really date. Although, I don't know, Robert O'Reilly's acting is a little bit hammy as well, and I don't know. You could still play it today and you would still be immersed in the Star Trek universe if you could find all the pieces to it and play the video.
Do you have to be like a Star Trek fan to enjoy the game? I mean, if you are a Star Trek fan, I guess it's hard to answer that question, but
I think that it would help a lot. Because it's the entire feel of the game. If you didn't really eBay for $50 for a complete one, wow!
I was going to ask if that has the VHS with it. You have to research for us. Does it have the VHS?
Even if it does, it's probably been chewed to heck by now. You know what I mean? It's probably had too many. Been sat by a TV or it's been sat by a speaker too long, and now the tape's wiped.
Well, if you're gonna play it, you're probably gonna use the YouTube version of the.
I guess you're gonna have to now, ain't you?
Oh, it says it's supposedly never been opened.
Wow, that should be going for way more than $50.
I was gonna say, quick, you should buy it, and then like it'll be a collector's item. But then I was like, if I say that, we're gonna be in a bidding war against each other, and this whole this whole chat is gonna go after it.
I guess the equivalent now is board games that you need to have an app for, because then that gets removed from the store, or the company goes bust, or whatever else. Suddenly you can't play it.
I don't know why, but the app, needing an app for a game, for some reason bothers me so much more than needing a VHS player. Probably because I really hate my cell phone, so that might have something to do with it.
It's also, I mean, just like you said, it's ephemeral. It's like you can't own the thing for real. You can't have it forever and sell it on eBay for $50. It goes away when somebody tells you it goes away, and that's the worst.
Yeah.
One of the things, one of the problems with that board game though that's on eBay right now, $50, is I don't want to open it, but I do want to open it. You get what I mean? Like, it's a collector's item. I wouldn't dream of opening it, but I want to open it so much just so that I can play it again, fresh and new. It's still got that, new car smell to it.
I know so many people that buy like 2 copies of things so that they can use one and keep the other just cuz.
Well, I guess try and find 2 copies of this that are brand new.
Eraserhead says, "May the best mod win." The joke there being that he is my only mod.
So were there other questions about it?
Does the chat have any? I have some more from the Discord, but I guess
or anyone on the panel?
You guys think? I'll read off the ones that are on the how replayable is it?
Ooh, well, it's replayable. However, some of the items that come with it are not really reusable. Like I said, those sticky things, the stickers, the com badge and the pips, it was like you stick them on a jumper or you stick them on a, any kind of cotton clothing, and that's it. It's completely lost its stick as soon as you take it back off again. So I guess that's why there were so many versions of the same sticker on that sticker sheet, basically. And then so you've got only so many runs, depending on how many of you are playing at the same time, I guess. And then, of course, you've got the video, which would probably chew up at some point, or it would, like when the heads get dirty, that sort of thing. And it just, you can't see it very well anymore. So replayability, probably if you played it once a year, you'd probably get about 5 years use out of it.
True sticker shock. Man, the puns are just flying in the chat today. Jack, I blame you. You started it.
I will happily take the blame.
Last question I think I have for... did I ask how approachable it was for non-Star Trek viewers? I can't remember if I asked that question already.
Yeah.
Okay.
You did. But I'll just reiterate, you could play it because the rules are there, but it's going to be more fun it's not like you have to know what a Klingon is, and it's not like you have to know who Commander Riker is or any of that. But whole point,
it's more fun if you do.
It's geared towards Star Trek fans.
And I think the chat is kind of answering the last question, which was how easy is it to find it today and play it today. The video's online, and the general consensus seems to be that prices are between $20 and $60 on eBay.
You go.
For the person who's looking, are there a lot of them, or are there just a few of them and they happen to be priced fairly low?
I think I seem to remember as well those plastic tubes, the stasis fields, they were made of a certain plastic that would go extremely brittle over time. And what's more, sticking everything back in the box, you tend to crush things and they would easily snap. Like you
So
crush it, and then you get like a split seam down it.
So not like those, indestructible dishes our parents and grandparents used to own.
Exactly. Paper plates. No.
I'm betting it's the VHS thing that's keeping the price low and making it less collectible. Because who still has a VHS player?
This game
I've got one right down here.
All right, there's always an exception.
This game makes me question Federation security measures when a Klingon can steal the Enterprise by pressing 3 buttons.
Not only that, right? Not only that, but he steals it from inside a starbase. Yeah, like he's Scotty or something. Do you know what I mean? In Search for Spock. Like, yeah, you're not getting out of there, bro.
Yeah, it's one thing if you're the if you're like a ranking, Starfleet member. It's quite another if you're. So the Klingon looked really familiar. It's been a very long time. Weirdly enough, it's been a long time since I watched anything except the original series because that tends to be my go-to. The Klingon looked really familiar. Was he actually in one of the other shows?
Well, he was in several of the Next Generation episodes. He played the character Gowron. But like I said, it's Robert O'Reilly who plays Gowron, and it's Robert O'Reilly who plays Kavok, this Klingon. Strangely, you know in Undiscovered Country when they no, it's not Undiscovered Country. What is it now? There's an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation where the Enterprise gets completely destroyed by Klingon birds of prey, and then they like go back in time and restart again, and they've got to keep going through this loop until they don't destroy the Enterprise anymore. Anyway, they reuse that shot for the end of the VHS. Basically, when you get to the Klingon homeworld and you lose the game, so basically he kills himself because he wants to start a war with the Federation. He wants the Klingon Empire to start a war with the Federation. So he steals the ship to take it back to Kronos just to, seppuku, basically.
And glorious death.
Yeah, exactly. And so they destroy the ship at the end, and they reused the footage from that one episode of Star Trek. When I was talking about the Undiscovered Country, I was thinking about that other scene where they destroyed the Klingon bird of prey, but then they reused it again in Generations when the Enterprise destroys the Klingon bird of.
So I'm being told that somewhere in Minecraft should have been included because there apparently is an ongoing joke about adding in Minecraft to things that YouTube might be upset about in the real world.
That's right. If I say that I want to beat someone up, I have to say that I want to do it in Minecraft. Or they should jump off a high cliff in Minecraft. That sort of thing.
Which is funny, since what you're saying is, in Star Trek, which seems like it ought to be pretty much the same. So somebody said with a sticker maker and a 3D printer, you ought to be able to get all the parts for this that might break in transport if you bought it off eBay.
Genius! The technology has come a long way, and it's far more user accessible now, isn't it? It's consumer accessible, I should say. Like you when back in those days, you would have had to go to a proper, cutter and printer and that sort of thing. You could do it all online now, couldn't you?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you'd have to get somebody who was smart enough to make one of the programs needed for a 3D printer, which is definitely not me, but.
Well, I mean, you could, like I say, you could just get it ordered online. Like the prints, all you'd have to do is send them a photograph of that sticker sheet, like a well-scanned sticker sheet. Or you could get a cry-cut machine, couldn't you? One of those cry-cut machines?
The stickers would be easy. I think we're talking about the pieces you said broke really easily. I think they'd have to 3D print.
You couldn't 3D print them because it's basically like a very thin polycarbonate tube. It was like so flexible and crushable. Like you wouldn't be able to 3D print that. It wouldn't come out clear enough. It wouldn't give you the same effect.
Could probably find a substitute.
I was going to say, I bet people could fake it. If it was a choice between having something that faked it and not being able to play the game at all, I think I would probably make do.
But there again, you could just use your imagination and say, yeah, he's got a stasis field on him at the minute, can't move. Oh, one of the interesting things was about the game, I remember, like you had to role play. Exactly. That, see, your chat is genius, coming up with all the good ideas.
Only you can prevent Wesley's.
Apparently, I just have a chat full of people that are good about getting around the rules. Adapt and overcome.
Wormy Spoons is definitely from the UK because he knows what a fairy liquid bottle is and how to use one.
Oh, I have no idea. So, I mean, I'm pretty up on my UK.
Fairy Liquid is a very old brand of washing up liquid, basically.
Dish soap.
They had it. That's right. Yeah, dish soap. Is that what they call it over there? Is it? We call it washing up liquid.
Are you fucking kidding me? That sounds like a slur that somebody made up about Brits to like, like they don't even say dish soap; they say washing up liquid. And I'd be like, no, don't be so mean to them. That's cruel. They have many problems. That's not one of them. They wouldn't stoop so low.
Yeah, just to sort of sidetrack the stream a little bit.
Washing up is doing the dishes, right? As opposed to here, where washing up would be like cleaning your hands.
Oh, I see. No, we call it the washing up, basically. When we're doing the dishes, we call it doing the washing up.
Yeah, I had to stretch back to my childhood to remember that one.
So here we go. I'm going to play you this now. I'm going to share my screen just so that you can get a feel for what it is. Let's share my screen. I'm getting there, just trying to fill the dead air.
As a bard should. While you're barding, has the chat decided on a role for Grim yet in our not really role playing party?
So here we go. I'm going to play this for you, and you can type your answers in the chat as we wait.
Daddy, have you seen my...
Ooh, that is loud.
Oh. All right, just a second. See if that's any better.
Daddy, have you seen my...
Perfect.
Mummy's going to be very cross with you.
Cross? Why?
Because that's her fairy liquid for her hand.
It's for getting dishes clean.
Mummy says these bubbles are soft and gentle and kind to her hand.
Well, it's done a very good job on these dishes, hasn't it?
Yes.
And are my hands soft?
Well, not as soft as Mummy's hand, but that's because you don't do as much washing up as Mummy does.
Now hands that do dishes can feel soft as your face with mild green fairy liquid.
And so there you go. That's a fairy liquid bottle there. And basically what you would do is you would make, rockets out of it, or, whatever your imagination, wherever your imagination took you.
The new bottles are rubbish.
Absolutely.
Right.
They don't make rockets.
Well, we are at 25 past, so I think we have just enough time for Josh to tell us about his role as voice of the worm before we need to start wrapping up, especially if we're as active in the chat with this as we have been with everything else, which I hope we will be. This is another game that I heard about on that particular Discord site, and I'm incredibly excited about it, especially considering some of the supplements that go with it. So, Josh?
Supplements that go with it. Well, I'm interested to hear what supplements you were excited about. But yeah, last year I put out a game called His Majesty the Worm. Oh god, it was it's a honker. I've been playing role-playing games for a long time, and like others. I read The Lord of the Rings when I was 12. And I remember thinking like, oh my god, I need more of whatever this was. And I crossed from the juvenile section to the adult section of the library, and started pulling down books. and my friends were like, "Hey, do you know about D&D and role-playing games?" And I was like, "Well, hold on. The Lord Jesus the Christ has told me that's not okay. This is the middle of the satanic panic." They're like, "It is okay, and we can play them in secret." So I got really into role-playing games, and I've been trying to catch that high of reading the Lord of the Rings for the first time ever since. And my friends have always been very indulgent with me. They've always kind of let me make games for them and play them, and I really lucky in that way. I started writing His Majesty the Worm. So like I said, I've always made games, but I had never shared them outside of my friend group. You could sit down at my table, play my game. But except for, some very, very simple efforts, I don't think that somebody outside my table could have read or played one of my games. Because there's a lot of things that you have to do to get an idea into somebody else's head. It's almost like witchcraft in some ways. You have to get somebody else to like understand what you mean and all the context surrounding it, and the trick of information management to make that seem simple and make it look easy and kind of enjoyable to read by itself. I think that role-playing game designers who do that well are some of the like most intelligent people and handsome and attractive in the world. I started writing the game in 2015, 2016. And I worked on it for about 7 years because it is not my full-time job. I'm just a normal guy. I worked on Sundays, and there's a million role-playing games out there, more and in more games in Polish than we know. But I was really interested in trying to get my hands around this concept. So I like some bog standard fantasy. Well, I'll put a little twist on that. I like vanilla, and I like very fancy French vanilla, especially. I like dungeons, and I even like dragons. I like many role-playing games. But I have never quite had the experience that I was always trying to get at the table, where dungeons felt terrifying and were interesting human experiences. One of my very, very favorite pieces of media in the recent years, and I think something that really gets the kind of concept that I'm trying to go for, was Dungeon Meshi, or Delicious in Dungeon. That I was reading it as a comic book when it was being scanslated online, and I'm thrilled that there's official translations so that people can buy it in bookstores. But like, if you're not familiar, it was a comic book now, an anime about these fantasy adventures that are going down into a dungeon, and they're kind of on a time limit, and they don't have a lot of money, so that they've resorted to eating monsters. And it's about 50% very interesting, very cool fantasy heroics, and then like 50% like cooking anime. And I think that's its gimmick and its charm, and it's extremely good at what it does. And I love thinking about the real practical limitations of exploring in dungeons: light and eating and food, getting wet as you wade through an underground river, and then your clothes are clinging to you, and you get ticks, and then you have to fight an orc, and that's bad in and of itself. And you have to camp, and you have to like have firewood to warm yourself up and dry your clothes out. And all of that stuff in many games that I've played, and I've played many because I love role-playing games. All that, how many times have you sat down at the table and you pull your little character sheet out? Maybe this is a new table to you, and you say something like, well, I have my guys here, and like, I calculate my encumbrance, and the DM says like, don't worry, my friend. We're not going to worry about that here. This is a fun table. And it's like, I want to care about encumbrance. I want it, but I want it to be fun. I think addition, which is what it is in many D&D editions, is not very fun. I want to care about light, and I want to care about food, and I want to care about water, because those are kind of like essential survival narrative stories to me that make me feel immersed in the character, make me think about what it would be like to be in this fantastic subterranean mythic underworld environment. And you age out of it very quickly in a lot of games with the word dungeon in the title. You get continual light, you get create food and water, you can create fire with the snap of your fingers, and all of a sudden those stories aren't very interesting anymore, because you're not having to use the dungeon meshy, like you're not having to like butcher a basilisk and like get their eggs and make like a souffle. And that's the sort of stories that I wanted to tell. So it's actually the Worms my attempt to do that. It is a game about dungeon crawling. It is in the old school milieu, which is to say, like, it's about dungeons and it's about dragons. And I very, very inspired by the game design currents that run through the old school Renaissance, which was big in the aughts and kind of early 2000s. And we have been trying to argue about whether it's alive or dead or what the R means for many, many, many years. But like, I think it's enormously inspiring. It is not a retro clone. The game uses tarot cards as the randomizer. So it's not just D&D with the numbers buffed off of it with like funny little more interesting names to me placed in. So it's an old school style game with new school rules. And it came out last year. I have had fun with it for years, and I am enormously chuffed that like somebody else might be able to be having fun with it now too. That's my spiel. I would love if anybody has any questions. So, like, I mean, like, to your comment, right? Like, I want to check you for ticks. I think that's an interesting character moment, and one of the things that I really wanted to get at about the game was these character relationships that people have with each other. I'm the happiest as a GM when my players are role playing with each other. One, I don't have to do fucking anything at that point. I can sit back and enjoy my glass of wine. Two, I think that's where the actual like juice of the game is. And I want to encourage characters and players to have these moments where they have to check each other for ticks. Maybe there's like a mechanical incentive, maybe it's just for fun. And mechanizing that sort of stuff is interesting to me. So in His Majesty the Worm, you have bonds. And you've seen those like relationship maps between like characters and things. So part of your character sheet, or it's a character sheet for the whole guild party, right? It's called your guild record sheet. And you have these relationships with everybody else at the table. So you can be allies or rivals or lovers, and who you check for ticks can be an interesting question. And if it's interesting and you talk about it at the table, you charge your bonds with each other. And when you camp in the dungeon, the way that you heal is you spend the charges on the bonds to like replenish your resources. So who checks me for ticks when that's an interesting character moment becomes a mechanic that becomes like the resting the resource behind resting in the dungeon. And I'm interested in that sort of stuff. I want games that tell those kind of stories. I don't want somebody to say, we don't do that here. I want somebody to say, like, what you're carrying on you is an interesting choice, as long as it's fun, as long as it's not hard to track, as long as it's not tedious bookkeeping, as long as it is easy and interesting. That's what role-playing games, I think, should be delivering.
So it sounds to me like you're trying to develop mechanics that encourage heavier role play between the players. Like, you're not going to let somebody that you don't trust check you for ticks, especially
Right.
if, it's in personal spots.
Exactly. And I think some of those things are in the game are explicit, right? Like, some of it is just like role playing, like when you make somebody laugh or when you are romantic towards them. Maybe like the sex moves in Apocalypse World. Those are some sort of like overt role playing with like mechanical impressions. But there's also a lot of things in the game that are baked in more subtle ways, in ways that I haven't called out explicitly in the game text. For example, when you are resting, you need to have a bedroll and a camp fire and a tent. You need 2 of 3. You don't not need all of them, but you need 2 of 3. And so tents are quite heavy and large in terms of how much encumbrance it takes up, and can only, because it's still like a tent that is small enough to kind of fold up in your backpack. It's still only a 2-person tent. So like when you're carrying these sort of rest materials, who do you share them with is like an implicit question, not an explicit question. And that's the sort of thing that I've put into the game mechanics that are mechanical questions with role playing implications that I did very deliberately.
That's really interesting. I tend to really like very heavy roleplay stuff. I mean, one of the reasons I don't like the new 5e is that it seems to take away from the role playing in favor of like number crunching and combat. I mean, the expectation seems to be that there will be at least one combat every single session, and that all of the characters have to go together in a certain way, designed specifically. So, the comparison I always make is that 5e gives you a lot of choices when you're building your character. But once you've made those choices, there's not a ton of room for growth unless you go down a very specific path. Whereas the games I prefer tend to be something like Shadow of the Demon Lord, where you have almost no choices when you start the game. But by the time you're done, there's something like 20,000 different options. I don't think that's the actual number, but it is literally in the thousands of options for your character development. And I really enjoy that kind of seeing how you can put things together in odd ways, because I think it makes for better role play. And it sounds very much like that's kind of what you're doing, is trying to make the mechanics more roleplay heavy than like, here's the path you have to follow in order to be able to kill the most things to make the next level.
Yeah, I think Shadow of the Demon Lord does a good job with progressive disclosure in the game, where if you're a new player, like making a character can be quite challenging, just like in the essential concepts, right? Like, and I don't think making a 5e character is particularly hard or anything, but if you're very new to role playing, there are some things that you kind of like need to be talked through. And Shadow of the Demon Lord, like taking like that one step at a time to be like, all right, well, choose your ancestry. And then, like, when you get to be level 1, choose your first class level, and then when you get to be level 2, choose your like second class feature, and then you like get those branching like World of Warcraft career paths, to get to 1,000. I think that's super smart game design. And his matches. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and if you're really, really new, they actually have a path for like, here's how you just randomly roll for your entire character, because technically in real life you wouldn't be able to choose your parentage.
Right. Yeah. So, as somebody who's coming from the OSR movement, like, let me say that like random generation for making characters is something I have the most fun with, but it's a different approach. But like, I really do. You can really have a lot of fun with that. In His Majesty the Worm, like progression is wide, not deep, is the way that I think about it. Is that I'm very shy of having plus ones. One, I don't think a plus one is an extremely interesting choice. When you set it and forget it on your character sheet, and you have just like a lot of plus ones and different skills, and you don't think about them again, like, and you're just like, oh, it's not part of my character, it's just part of my character sheet. And I think that choice, like your character abilities should be interesting, they should be evoked instead of background. So I'm very leery of getting higher numbers, but I'm very interested in getting more choices. So that's what I mean by like wide, not deep. So I think that characters get more choices as they level up, so that they have different tools to approach problems and not bigger numbers to hit more.
With your use of tarot cards, which way are you taking it? So, like, on the one hand, I was just looking up at Everway on my shelf, where you just dole out a card and you interpret it freeform. Or on the other side of things, maybe you've got something like, I don't know, Eternal Contenders or Original Deadlands, where the cards, have a hard and fast mechanical meaning. So which sort of direction did you go with that?
Yeah, I guess neither. They're more like playing cards, which is a little bit like more like Deadlands. But like, I think that cards are very cool in role-playing games. I think they have a lot of advantages to using dice. They are persistent, so that, something like a random table has memory because you're not going to draw the same result twice. They're physical, so you can like have them in your hand. You can like take a card from your hand and hand them to somebody else. They're gameable. You can draw 3, put down 2. You can play from the top of the discard deck. They're informationally rich. A tarot card has direction, number, suit, major or minor arcana, the gender of the characters on the card, if there's a monster on the card or not. There's all sorts of like things on the cards. They're interesting to look at. They're pretty. They're artistic. I think cards have all these advantages. But like, I mean, to me, they're just like game mechanic, like movers. I don't have any knowledge. Well, I mean, that's not entirely true. I don't think about cards as being mystical or arcane or having any like inherent information. They're just random number generators. They're dice plus for me. So in the same way that you can have like, they're just like 14s, like a tarot card as opposed to poker deck is 14 from ace to king. They have a couple more, a jack and a knight and stuff. It's just like a D14, but like informationally rich and weird. And I chose tarot instead of playing cards because they just look cool. They're just like fun to have at the table and fun to look at. They're fun. They're fun to play with. So I don't know anything, or I didn't use any rules about, the 9 of Swords is the sorrow and the bad luck ahead. It's just like the 9 of Swords is 9 and has cool looking swords on it and it's fun to to pick up and grab.
Do you have to like know any? Because I have literally never picked up a deck of tarot cards. I wouldn't know what any of them meant or how to read any of them. Or
well, that's exactly my point. You don't have, I mean, they're it's nothing. It's just 9 and swords. It's like a 9 of spades, but they're cool looking.
They just look more interesting than a regular deck of cards.
Yeah, they look more.
I have tons of sets. I use them for inspiration for adventures, things like that, or NPCs.
Yeah, one could. There's just nothing in the game that suggests that you might. Like, there's no guidance to do that. It's just they're just random number generators.
Interesting looking number generators, and probably more random than most of the online number generators. Which tend to not be very random at all. All right, questions for the voice of the worm? I'm just entitling you that from now on. You are now the voice.
Give me the voice of the worm.
I love
it. Let's see. I had a couple of questions from online.
No, that was a question. I want to hear the voice of the worm.
Oh. I think it's all in writing.
What's the voice that you would give the worm?
Oh, I mean, you're hearing it, baby. Like, you're hearing it right now, coming to you live.
He does have a very, very smooth whiskey-esque voice.
Oh, it's because of my copious whiskey.
There we go. Somebody said online, the game seems to target longer scale dungeoning and managing resource environments. Can the game also be enjoyed as a one-shot, and can you use pre-made characters?
Yeah, good question. Yes and no is what I'm gonna say. You can do anything with role-playing games. That is one of their great, their great benefits. I can take a Star Trek RPG and I could, put those guys on the holodeck and run like Dungeons and Dragons with it if I wanted. I would be ignoring about half the rules. And I don't even have to put them on the holodeck. I just I love the Star Trek RPG rules, and I'm gonna play Dungeons and Dragons using it. It's not what the game was meant to do. The game is long form. It is about dungeon crawling, and all the rules are laser focused on that, which you might not believe me because the book is very big, but the rules are laser focused on dungeon crawling. And I have run other games with it. I've been playing it for a long time. I've done, I've run Dolmenwood with it, and I've done some like Zelda-esque kind of like games as campaigns just to like entertain myself. But the book is about dungeon crawling. Could you play it as a one shot? One could. I don't think the game will come alive that way. I don't think you're going to see the rules in that way. I mean, you could play D&D and have no magic casting classes and ignore 9/12 of the classes, but like that's not what the game's designed to do. Could you play with pre-made characters? Sure. There's some pre-made characters on my website. I built them out to help you get started. I don't mind playing with pre-made characters. Please do.
So
Yeah.
there's a kind of ongoing joke about my loathing of all things magic in all systems. So if I could play D&D without any magic systems, I'd probably be really happy.
There's a million systems that are going to give you a better experience for a low fantasy, no magic game than D&D and cutting out half the things. There's just better games to do that. And it's not hard to learn a new game. It's hard to learn D&D. It's not hard to learn a new game. I play new games every week. I love learning new games. It's interesting and it's fun.
Yep.
There are better games to run a low magic system than taking bog standard D&D and cutting out half the content.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of running either horror games or like ultra weird funny games.
Mm-hmm.
I have an important question. When's the hard copy going to be available again?
Yes,
Yeah.
that was going to be my next question.
As near as I can tell, printing things and shipping them internationally is the hardest thing in the world, and it's harder than putting a man on a moon. I'm somewhat new to the industry, and like the realism of like the cost of paper, which we when we're RPG designers, we're not going to like social media and just like hammering on that, but like those are the practical realities of the world that we live in. Which is to say, the game has sold out twice, which is a good problem to have. But we are trying to fix it as soon as we can be. So I'm hoping that a reprint comes out in the next. I'm hopeful the next month or so, but I don't have any hard dates to share. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've been sliding harder into the print on demand because at least Lulu.com has printers in different countries.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully that'll get around any tariff shenanigans or other goings on. So
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you're interested in a hard copy, Exalted Funeral is the publisher of the book. You can sign up for an email when they get their hard copies back in.
I'm all signed up.
Very good.
Yeah, it's harder. Hang on a second. Sorry, I just realized
Bless you,
I was
I
gonna
assume.
cough. Actually, I swallowed wrong. Hey.
That's what she said.
I knew you were gonna go there.
I went there in my head. I just tried to restrain myself.
Nah, none of that here. We had a whole conversation about like what rating you could go on before you got here. So yes, phrasing. As Eraserhead says, phrasing. Now we have to see if I can remember my train of thought again. So one of the many reasons that it's also an ongoing joke that I loathe Amazon, and have not purchased anything from them since 2013.
Good on you.
But one of the reasons is because I love small publishers and small authors. And It's something like in the United States, Amazon killed something like a third of all small publishers because they now have a stranglehold on the independent publishing company, which has made things more expensive to publish because there just aren't as many. So,
Right. Yeah, it's a huge. I mean, I also love indie games and small press. Not just for that reason, but because I think that like there's so many smart, talented, funny people in the world, and I am devastated by the number that I'll never know, and I love to discover ones that I haven't yet found, and I want to buy from those people.
well, hang out on
Mhm.
my indie author interviews and you'll meet lots of people who are totally self-published. So somebody said that they believe that they have heard your voice after nights of copious tequila drinking.
Yeah, that's not a bad memory. That's me. I'm coming over. I'm leaning over your body and I'm whispering to you at night.
And I'm gonna kind of skim over this because we're getting a little bit close to the end here, and I don't want anyone to get cut off and not be able to promote their stuff. But um, I believe on your website you have a whole section for people who want to do third-party supplements, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I tried to make the license do that. I'm not a big believer in copyright. I don't think it's good for art, and I've tried to make the license as permissive as possible. I think that especially small games live and die by people's interest in like hacking it for the stuff that they're interested in. So I hosted a Worm Jam end of last year, and there's some really cool adaptations and like new materials that have come out of that. I think that is like so super exciting, and I really really am excited about the third party materials that are coming out.
Yeah. So I do want to mention to everyone that you can get a PDF of His Majesty the Worm on Drive-Thru RPG, and there are a number of people that have made third-party supplements that are also available. And I, being a book lover, I want a hard copy of the book, but I'm also then gonna go out and get some of these third-party supplements and try and support all the small creators. So.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it does look like I really need to copy the book first. So, any last minute questions for Josh? Otherwise, we will go back to Grim and start doing outros. Okay, Grim, you want to tell us about your channel and what you're going to be doing in the next week or so, and where people can find you?
Okay, well, my YouTube channel, my main one, is Postmortem Video, all one word. There I do book reviews, book retrospectives, mostly role-playing games. I also do Off-Topic Tuesdays, where I seek to make people unsubscribe by talking about things they don't want to hear about. And this year I've started another video, which I do once a week, called Pretentious Waffle, where I just allow myself to be all arty-farty and pseudo-intellectual about something, usually to do with games again. I have a secondary channel called Grim Streams, where I run games every other week, doing one-shots, because I'm on a project to run everything in my bookshelves at least once, which, considering I kind of have taken on a role as an RPG archivist, that's a lot of games, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending how you look at it. I also regularly games master for some adult entertainers on a show called Tabletopless, which is not safe for work in any way, shape, or form.
Jack's eyebrows just climbed further up his forehead than I have ever seen.
It is fun, but it's not as much fun as it sounds because I still have to run a game. put it that way. You can find most of my stuff on sale, or links to where you can find it, at post-mort.com.
I did not see your book review stuff. I will have to check that out. I also do a series called # The Book Is Better, where I talk about books that have been made into movies. So I'll have to check that out.
It's almost entirely role playing games, but occasionally I dip into films or books or other things.
I'll have to take a look. All right, Jack?
Well, just to say you got a new subscriber on Grim Streams now, so there you go. I am Jack Tarlad at Jack Tarlad on Twitter and all of my socials. You can find my link tree in my bio on Twitter. I still refuse to call it X. What am I doing? Tuesday nights, it's usually 10 o'clock GMT. I stream of a night time. So 10 o'clock GMT on a Tuesday, which right now we're doing the game stream of GTA Vice City, the original version, not the remastered version, not the definitive edition or anything like that. And then on Thursdays, I do a show called Must Dashcam, where I live react to new dashcam footage that's appeared on the internet. And on Wednesday nights, I join Tomby and the crew for the Hump Day Chinwag, and that's at 8 o'clock GMT. And Mondays, I'm supposed to be starting a new stream at 10 o'clock called the Something or Nothing stream. I haven't managed to quite get that off the ground yet because I was supposed to do it this Monday, but unfortunately, life takes precedence. So I wasn't able to, but hopefully, I'm hoping this Monday we'll get that new stream started. And look out for Read and Roll, because I really want to get that off the ground, where I'll be taking a guest through a fighting fantasy book. So yeah, look out for my stuff. Thanks, and thanks for having me on, Eclectic Goat. Been fun.
Thank you for coming. Josh?
Let's see. Well, I'm at Rise Up Comus at both social media. My blog is riseupcomus.blogspot.com. I think the next thing right now I'm putting out a series of like academic courses about dungeon designing. If you're interested in making your own dungeons and want to go through a course step by step, please join me. Knock issue number 5 is coming out this year, so look forward to that. I also have His Majesty the Worm dungeon coming out this year, I hope.
Okay. I think you were the fastest, most concise of any of us. All of those links that Eraserhead has been posting are going to be in the description when I do the re-upload this evening as well. I am the Eclectic Goat on Twitter and Discord and here. I recently put out hashtag the book is better, the Green Mile. I've been amazed. I expected there to be lots of pushback to my results, but so far no one's gotten, too angry with me. I also have made some shorts out of the very first Slice and Dice for people that don't have 2 hours to go back and watch all of that. And a couple of, I call them Slice and Dice minis. And then there are a couple of shorts of just, the funniest things that happened during that particular stream. I'm going to be going through and trying to make minis out of all of the past ones, again, so that people can, who have 20 minutes but not 2 hours can get some of those in. I am also working hard on my underappreciated 90s tech edition. I expect that to be out fairly shortly. And man, I found some really good shows in the course of this. So I'm really excited to present some of those. We are here every day at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time for Slice and Dice on Wednesdays. I said every day. I should have said every Wednesday at 6. Yeah, I don't have time to do this more than once a week. The first Monday of every month at 6 o'clock, I do indie author interviews for independent authors who are self-published, small authors who don't get a lot of attention otherwise. In March, I'm going to have Thomas Tate, who does kind of military-esque. It's very much like an 80s action movie. Full disclosure, I used to do some editing for him, so I've read quite a lot of his stuff. And then the second and fourth Monday of every month at 6 o'clock, we are going to be doing shows you've never seen, where I have a panel of fairly young people who missed 90s and early 2000 television so that they can watch television shows that they have never seen, and we can kind of get their reactions to what good television used to be. I want to thank everyone. Thank you very much, Rachel. I'm very happy to see that you enjoyed the video. And oh yeah, that's the other thing. I am at 330 subscribers. My goal is to hit 350 by the end of the month. So I'm hoping everyone can spread the word and help me out with that a little bit. I want to thank everyone in the chat for having been here. I want to thank my panelists. We'll have our little outro song, and hopefully I will then see you backstage so we can thank you properly. And everyone have a great night.
Take care.
Meet me at the tavern, have a drink or two. I'm the eclectic goat, and I'm here to gab with you. We'll talk about immersion, adventure heavy lows, characters and story, warlocks and barbarians and bards, comedy or horror. We got inspiration if you're in need of it, or just need to hang out somewhere cozy. We're the guys for you, we've got time for you. Come and join the crew, here's what to do. Meet us at the tavern, have a drink or two. I'm the eclectic goat, and I'm here to play with you. We'll discuss the theory and the mechanics, how we ask for crits, Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards. Meet us at the tavern, have a drink or two. I'm the eclectic goat, and I'm here to play with you. We'll discuss the theory and the mechanics, how we ask for crits, Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards.